"I'll work for free, please take me." What the cowboy said next changed her forever. The ranch gates swung open as Katie Sullivan ran through them, her dress torn and muddy from 3 days on foot. Behind her, somewhere in the desert, 5 men were still hunting. She stumbled into the yard where a tall cowboy was shoeing a horse, his hands steady despite the commotion she brought with her. "Help me!" she gasped, collapsing near the fence. "They killed my father. They're coming for me." The cowboy looked up slowly, taking in her condition with sharp blue eyes. He didn't ask questions. Instead, he walked to the barn and emerged with a rifle, checking it with practiced ease. His name was Cole Bennett, and he'd been running this small ranch alone since his brother died 6 months ago. "How many?" he asked. 5. "Maybe 6. They work for Vincent Price, the man who wants our land." Cole nodded once. "Get inside the house. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say." But Katie didn't move. She straightened despite her exhaustion. "I'll work for free," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "Please take me. I've got nowhere else to go. I can cook, clean, work the horses, anything." Cole studied her for a long moment. The sound of hoofbeats echoed in the distance, growing louder. He made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "You can work," he said, "but not for free. Nobody works my land without fair pay. Now get inside and grab the shotgun from above the fireplace. You're about to earn your first day's wage." Katie's eyes widened, but she ran for the house. Cole positioned himself behind a water trough, rifle ready. The riders appeared over the ridge, 6 of them, just as Katie had said. They rode hard and fast, confident in their numbers. The leader was a brutal man named Frank Dawson, Vincent Price's top enforcer. He'd killed Katie's father in cold blood 2 days ago when the old man refused to sell his land. Now he wanted the daughter dead too, to make sure no one could challenge Price's claim in court. "We know she's here, Bennett," Frank shouted as they slowed their horses 50 yards out. "Hand her over, and we'll leave peaceful." Cole didn't respond. He simply raised his rifle and fired, hitting the dirt inches from Frank's horse. The animal reared, throwing Frank's aim off. The other 5 men scattered, reaching for their weapons. From the house window, Katie watched with the shotgun in her shaking hands. Cole moved like water, smooth and deliberate, firing and reloading with a speed that shocked her. 2 men fell from their horses before they could get a clean shot. The others took cover behind rocks and fence posts. This was the moment everything changed. As bullets flew and wood splintered around them, Katie realized Cole wasn't just defending his property. He was defending her, a stranger he'd met only minutes ago. And more than that, he'd given her dignity when she had none left, refusing to let her debase herself by working for nothing. She aimed the shotgun through the window, her hands steadying with purpose. The desert wind carried gunpowder smoke across the ranch as Cole dove behind a horse cart, reloading quickly. Frank and his 3 remaining men had spread out, circling the property like wolves. Kitty counted their positions from her window, her breathing slow and controlled now. Fear had transformed into something harder, something her father would have recognized. One rider broke from cover, charging toward the house with his pistol blazing. Katie squeezed the shotgun trigger, the recoil slamming her shoulder. The blast caught the horse's front legs, sending both animal and rider tumbling. The man scrambled up, clutching his arm, and limped back toward the rocks. "Good shot!" Cole called out without looking back. He'd been tracking her through the reflection in a metal pan hanging near the barn. The girl had courage and decent instincts. That was more than most ranch hands he'd known. Frank cursed and fired twice at Cole's position, splintering wood but missing flesh. He hadn't expected resistance, certainly not from a lone rancher and a terrified girl. Vincent Price had promised this would be simple. Find the girl, silence her, burn the evidence. But Frank was starting to realize this job had teeth. "Bennett," Frank shouted during a lull in gunfire, "Price is offering $5,000 for the girl. You could take that money, start fresh somewhere else. Why die for someone you don't even know?" Cole ejected an empty shell and loaded another round. The question hung in the air like dust. Why was he doing this? He'd spent 6 months isolated on this ranch, drowning in memories of his brother's death, speaking to no one, trusting no one. Then this girl appeared, desperate and honest, asking not for charity but for work. Something about that had cracked the wall he'd built around himself. "Because?" she asked with dignity. Cole said simply, then fired twice. One bullet struck Frank's hat, sending it flying. The second hit the rock inches from his face, showering him with stone chips. Katie watched 2 men trying to flank around the barn's far side. She called out the warning, and Cole shifted position instantly, his rifle tracking their movement. He waited until they committed to their approach, then fired methodically. One man grabbed his leg and fell. The other retreated, dragging his companion. That left Frank and one other man. The sun was climbing higher, turning the ranch yard into an oven. Katie's throat burned with thirst, but she didn't dare leave her post. Through the window she could see Cole's shirt darkening with sweat, but his hands never wavered. Frank was calculating now. He'd lost 3 men, wounded another. Price would be furious, but Frank's pride stung worse than any threat from his boss. A girl and a rancher had bested 5 of his men. If word got out, his reputation would be destroyed. He signaled his remaining companion, a thin man named Kurt Hayes, who was known for his knife work. They would rush from 2 sides, overwhelming through speed and aggression. It was desperate, but staying pinned down would only give Bennett more advantage. They moved simultaneously. Frank charged straight up the middle, firing rapidly to keep Cole's head down. Kurt sprinted toward the house, moving with surprising speed for someone so lean. Katie saw him coming and fired the shotgun, but he'd anticipated it diving beneath the blast. He rolled to his feet and crashed through the door she'd forgotten to properly bar. Katie stumbled backward, fumbling to reload. Kurt was on her in seconds, one hand grabbing the shotgun barrel, the other reaching for his knife. They struggled, crashing into furniture. His breath was hot and reeking of tobacco. Outside, Cole heard the commotion and made his choice. He stood fully upright, exposed, and walked directly toward Frank with his rifle at his hip. Frank's eyes widened at the audacity. He fired 3 shots, each missing by inches as Cole advanced with unnatural calm. When Frank's hammer clicked on an empty chamber, Cole was 10 feet away. "Drop it," Cole said quietly. Frank's hand moved toward a backup pistol in his belt. Cole's rifle barked once, and Frank's shoulder erupted red. The enforcer screamed and fell, clutching the wound. Inside the house, Katie drove her knee into Kurt's stomach with everything she had. As he doubled over, she smashed the shotgun stock against his temple. He collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. She stood over him, breathing hard, amazed at what her body had done when survival demanded it. Cole appeared in the doorway, checking her with a quick glance. "You hurt?" Katie shook her head, unable to speak. Cole moved past her and dragged Kurt outside, dropping him next to Frank. The other wounded men had already fled, leaving trails of blood across the desert dirt. "You're going to give Vincent Price a message," Cole told Frank. "This ranch is protected, so is everyone on it. He comes here, he dies. You come back, you die. Understood?" Frank nodded weakly, his face gray with pain. Cole dragged both men to their horses and helped them mount, though his assistance was rough. As they rode away slowly, Katie emerged from the house. She looked at the destruction, the bullet holes, the blood and the dirt, and then at Cole's calm face. "I meant what I said," she told him. "I'll work for whatever you think is fair." Cole reloaded his rifle methodically. "Tomorrow you start learning to break horses. Pay is $30 a month plus room and board. We shake on it, that's a contract. You walk away before a year is up, I keep half your wages for the trouble of training you." He extended his hand. Katie took it, feeling the calluses and strength there. His grip was firm but not crushing, respectful of her as an equal. In that handshake, she felt the first stability she'd known since her father's murder. "One more thing," Cole added. "You ever pull a trigger on a man again, you make sure you're doing it because there's no other choice. Not for revenge, not for anger. You understand?" Katie nodded. She understood more than he knew. This cowboy who defended her wasn't just offering work. He was offering a chance to rebuild herself into something stronger than what Vincent Price's men had tried to destroy. They spent the rest of the day repairing damage and cleaning up. As the sun set, Cole showed her to the small guest room that had been his brother's. It was simple but clean, with a window facing east toward the mountains. That night, Katie lay awake listening to the desert wind and the distant howl of coyotes. Her father was dead. Her home was ashes. Everything she'd known was gone. But somehow, in the midst of that loss, she'd found something unexpected. Purpose. Direction. A place where her value wasn't measured by her weakness, but by her willingness to stand up when it mattered. In the main room, Cole sat cleaning his rifle, thinking about the girl sleeping down the hall. He'd been alone so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like to be responsible for another person. It terrified and energized him in equal measure. His brother would have laughed at the situation. Cole had always been the one who avoided complications, who kept people at arm's length. Now he'd taken on someone else's fight without hesitation. Maybe that was growth, or maybe it was just the right thing to do. Either way, the choice was made. Tomorrow they would start fresh, building something new from the ashes of what had been lost. Vincent Price received the news of Frank's failure while dining in his mansion 20 miles west. The expensive whiskey in his crystal glass suddenly tasted sour. He set it down carefully, his jaw working as Frank stammered through his report. The enforcer's shoulder was bandaged, his pride shattered worse than bone. "One man did this," Price said softly. "One rancher and a girl." Frank nodded miserably. "Cole Bennett. He's different, boss. Moves like he's been in real combat. Not just some ranch hand playing tough." Price dismissed Frank with a wave, watching him limp out. Alone in his study, surrounded by maps of all the land he'd acquired through intimidation and violence, Price made a decision. Bennett's ranch was a small property, barely 300 acres, but it sat on water rights that controlled flow to 6 other properties. With Bennett gone, those 6 would have to sell too. The railroad would pay premium prices for that continuous stretch. He opened a drawer and pulled out a telegram form. The message he composed was short and to the point. It went to Tucson, to a man named Carl Bishop who specialized in problems that required permanent solutions. Bishop's rate was $500 plus expenses. Price had used him twice before, both times successfully. Unlike Frank and his crew, Bishop worked alone and never failed. The response came back within hours. Bishop would arrive in 3 days. At the ranch, Katie woke before dawn to the smell of coffee. She dressed quickly in some of her father's old work clothes that Cole had retrieved from her burned homestead. They fit poorly, but they would do. In the kitchen, Cole was frying eggs and salt pork, his movements efficient. "Can you ride?" he asked without preamble. "Since I was 6, Katie replied. "Good." After breakfast, we're moving the horses to the north pasture. There's better grass there, and I want them away from the ranch house for a while. If Price sends more men, I don't want them using the herd as leverage. They worked together through the morning, and Katie proved herself capable. She handled the horses with confidence, reading their moods and responding appropriately. Cole watched her work with approval. She wasn't just competent, she was naturally gifted with animals. That was rare and valuable. By noon, they had 30 horses settled in the north pasture with fresh water. On the ride back, Cole spoke more than he had all morning. "Your father had a deed to his land," he said. "It's a statement, not a question." Katie nodded. He kept it in a safe box at the territorial office in town. He was smart about things like that. "That deed is what keeps you alive," Cole continued. "As long as it exists, you're the legal owner. Price can't just take it. He needs you gone and the deed destroyed. Otherwise, the railroad won't touch the deal. Too much legal trouble." Katie considered this. "So I'm not just running from revenge. I'm running for business." "Exactly. Which means Price won't stop. Men like him don't know when to quit. They just escalate until they win, or until someone makes them stop permanently." The words hung heavy between them. Katie understood the implication. Eventually, this situation would require a final confrontation. Cole was preparing her for that reality, not hiding behind comfortable lies. They reached the ranch as storm clouds gathered in the west. The air felt electric, charged with approaching rain. Cole glanced at the darkening sky and made a decision. "We're going to town tomorrow," he said. "You need to file a claim with the marshal about your father's murder. Get it on record. Make it official. That way, if anything happens to you, there's documented proof of Price's involvement."
"What if the marshal is on Price's payroll?" Katie asked.
"Then we'll know exactly where we stand," Cole replied grimly. That evening, they sat on the porch as the storm broke. Rain hammered the dry earth, releasing the smell of wet sage and creosote. Lightning split the sky in brilliant fractures. Katie watched the violence of the weather and thought about the violence of men. Both were natural forces in their way, destructive and powerful, but only one could be reasoned with or stopped through courage and action. "Cole," she said carefully, "why did you really help me? You could have just pointed me toward town, given me water, sent me on my way." "Why fight my battle?" Cole was quiet for a long time, watching rain stream off the porch roof. When he finally spoke, his voice carried weight. "My brother died 6 months ago," he said. "We were working together, building this ranch into something real. Then he got sick, fever that wouldn't break. I rode for the doctor, but by the time we got back, he was gone. I kept working the ranch because I didn't know what else to do. But it felt hollow, like I was just going through motions, waiting for something to give me a reason to feel alive again." He turned to look at her directly. "Then you showed up asking for work, not charity. Asking with dignity when you had every reason to beg. That meant something. It reminded me that courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about standing up when every part of you wants to run. My brother had that. You have it too. I couldn't turn away from that. Wouldn't have forgiven myself if I had." Katie felt tears threatening but blinked them back. "Thank you," she said simply. "Don't thank me yet," Cole replied. This gets worse before it gets better. Tomorrow we ride into town, and that's when Price will know for certain you're still alive and protected. He'll have to move decisively. Whatever happens next, it'll be fast and brutal." "I'm ready," Katie said, and realized she meant it. The storm passed through the night, leaving the morning fresh and clean. They rode toward town at steady pace, two figures on horseback crossing the desert with purpose. Katie wore her father's gun belt now, the weight of it unfamiliar but somehow comforting. Cole had spent an hour teaching her how to draw and fire properly, correcting her stance and grip until the movements felt natural. The town of Redemption sat at the base of Red Rock Cliffs, a collection of wooden buildings arranged along a single main street. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, where secrets were currency and loyalty could be bought. Price owned half the buildings and controlled most of the commerce. The marshal's office sat at the far end of the street, a small structure with bars on the windows. Carl Bishop watched them ride in from his position in the hotel window. He'd arrived early that morning, studying the town and gathering information. Bishop was 40 years old, lean and unremarkable in appearance. That was his greatest asset. People never remembered him clearly, never saw him coming until it was too late. He'd killed 17 men in his career, each death ruled accidental or attributed to someone else. He was a ghost who left bodies in his wake. He observed Cole and Katie dismount and walk toward the marshal's office. Bennett moved with awareness, his eyes constantly scanning. The girl stayed close, her hand near her weapon but not touching it. Good instincts, Bishop noted. This wouldn't be as simple as Price had implied. Then again, Bishop preferred challenges. Easy jobs bored him. Inside the marshal's office, a heavy man with tobacco-stained teeth looked up from his desk. Marshal Pete Crawford had worn the badge for 12 years, collecting payoffs and looking the other way for most of them. When he saw Katie, his expression shifted from bored to calculating. "Katie Sullivan," he said slowly. "Heard you were dead. Frank Dawson said as much." "Frank Dawson is a liar and a murderer," Katie replied coldly. "He killed my father on Vincent Price's orders. I'm here to file formal charges." Crawford's eyes shifted to Cole, assessing the threat. He knew Cole by reputation, knew the man was dangerous when provoked. This situation required careful handling. "That's a serious accusation," Crawford said. "You got proof?" "I've got witness testimony," Katie said. "Mrs. Chen saw them ride onto our property. She heard the gunshots."
"She saw them burn the house."
"Mrs. Chen is 80 years old and half blind," Crawford countered. "Price's lawyers would tear that apart in 10 seconds. Then I'll testify myself," Katie insisted. "I was there. I saw everything." Crawford leaned back in his chair, making it creak. "Now see, that's the problem. You're the interested party. Your testimony alone won't hold up. And if Mrs. Chen's all you got for corroboration, well, you're wasting my time and yours." Cole stepped forward, his presence filling the small office. "File the report, Marshal. Do your job. Or explain to the territorial governor why you refused to investigate a murder when you had a witness ready to testify." Crawford's face reddened. "You threatening a lawman, Bennett?" "I'm reminding you what that badge is supposed to mean," Cole replied evenly. "You can honor it or disgrace it. Your choice. But either way, that report gets filed and forwarded to the territorial authorities. We'll wait while you write it up." The two men stared at each other, the air thick with tension. Finally, Crawford pulled out a form and began writing with exaggerated slowness. It took 20 minutes, during which he asked pointless questions and made deliberate errors he had to cross out. But eventually, the document was complete. He stamped it with unnecessary force and handed Katie a copy. "There," he said, "all official and proper. Won't make a bit of difference, but it's filed." "Satisfied?" "We are," Katie said, taking the paper and folding it carefully. They walked out into the bright sunlight. Across the street, Bishop watched them emerge and made his assessment. The marshal had been useless, as expected. Price's influence was too strong. But the girl had what she needed now, legal documentation that would complicate things for Price if she stayed alive. That made her death more urgent and more valuable. Bishop checked his pocket watch. Noon. He would move this evening after they returned to the ranch. Night work was cleaner, easier to obscure. He'd already scouted the property that morning while they were in town. The approach was straightforward. Single-story ranch house, barn 30 yards away, clear sight lines from multiple positions. He would wait until they were settled for the evening, then fire the house and pick them off as they emerged. Simple, effective, untraceable. Cole and Katie rode back to the ranch in silence, each lost in thought. Cole knew the marshal would send word to Price immediately. That meant the timeline had accelerated. Whatever Price had planned would happen soon, probably within days. They needed to be ready. Katie felt the weight of the document in her pocket. It seemed like such a small thing, a piece of paper with words on it. But Cole was right. It changed the equation. She wasn't just a witness now, she was a documented complainant with legal standing. That made her more dangerous to Price, which ironically made her more of a target. The protection of law only worked if the law could be enforced. Out here, surrounded by Price's men and influence, paper meant very little against bullets. They reached the ranch as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Cole immediately began defensive preparations. He positioned rifles at strategic points throughout the house, filled buckets with water in case of fire, and moved supplies into the storm cellar. Katie helped, understanding without being told that they were preparing for siege. As darkness fell, Cole extinguished the lamps. They sat in the dark house, waiting. The desert night was alive with sounds, coyotes howling, owls hunting, wind moving through sage. But beneath those natural rhythms, both of them listened for something else, something human and deadly. Bishop moved through the darkness like smoke. He'd left his horse a mile out and covered the distance on foot, his steps silent despite the rocky ground. He carried a rifle with a scope, a can of kerosene, and matches. The plan was straightforward. Set the fire, wait for them to emerge, eliminate both targets. By dawn, he'd be 50 miles away, and Crawford would rule it, an accidental blaze caused by a knocked-over lamp. He approached from the east, using the barn as cover. The house was dark, which pleased him. They were likely asleep. He moved to the back wall, preparing to pour kerosene along the base. Then he paused. Something felt wrong. The house was too dark, too quiet. It felt like a trap. Inside, Cole sensed rather than heard the presence outside. He touched Katie's arm in the darkness, a prearranged signal. They'd discussed this possibility, prepared for it. Katie moved silently to the cellar entrance while Cole positioned himself near the back window. Bishop decided to test his instincts. Instead of starting the fire, he threw a rock at the front door, a small noise designed to provoke reaction. Nothing. The house remained still. He circled wide, rifle ready, approaching from a different angle. This time he saw movement through a window, just a shadow, but enough to confirm someone was awake and aware. The hunter had become the hunted, and Bishop recognized it immediately. He was compromised, his surprise gone. Most men would have retreated, planned another approach. But Bishop was proud and professional. He'd been paid to deliver results. He would finish this. He fired through the window where he'd seen movement, working the bolt action smoothly and firing again, 3 shots in rapid succession. Glass shattered and wood splintered. Inside, Cole had already moved, anticipating the attack. The bullet struck a dummy he'd positioned earlier, a crude figure made from his brother's old clothes stuffed with straw. Cole returned fire from a different window, aiming at the muzzle flash. Bishop dodged, impressed despite himself. Bennett was no amateur. This would require a different approach. He retreated into the darkness, circling the property, looking for advantage. Katie emerged from the cellar behind the barn exactly as planned. While Bishop focused on the house, she would flank him. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her hands were steady. She moved with the lessons her father had taught her during hunting trips, placing each foot carefully, controlling her breathing. She saw Bishop's silhouette against the stars, 60 feet away. He was focused on the house, calculating angles. Katie raised her father's pistol, remembering Cole's instructions. Breathe. Aim center mass. Squeeze, don't pull. She fired twice. The first shot missed. The second caught Bishop in the side, spinning him around. He fired reflexively, his shot wild. Then he was moving, wounded but dangerous, disappearing into the night. Katie held her position, not pursuing. Cole had been clear about that. Never chase into darkness. Let them come to you or let them run. Cole emerged from the house, rifle ready. He saw Katie standing alert, weapon ready. He saw the blood trail leading into the desert. Bishop was hit but not finished. A wounded predator was the most dangerous kind. They waited through the night, taking turns watching while the other rested. Bishop never returned. When dawn broke, they found his trail, blood drops on stone leading west. Cole followed it for 2 miles until it reached hoofprints. Bishop had made it to his horse and fled. He was hurt, maybe badly, but he'd escaped. We should go after him, Katie said. Cole shook his head. He's done. Wounded like that, bleeding, he'll need a doctor. He won't be back. And even if he survives, he failed his contract. Men like him don't stick around after failure. Bad for business. They returned to the ranch, tired but victorious in their way. Katie had shot a man, maybe killed him. The weight of it settled on her shoulders as the adrenaline faded. She sat on the porch steps, staring at her hands. Cole sat beside her, understanding without words. "The first time changes you," he said quietly. "Makes you see yourself differently. You'll wonder if you're a bad person for what you did. You're not.
You protected yourself and others.
That's what good people do when evil forces them to choose." Katie nodded slowly. Her father would have understood. He'd been a gentleman, but he'd fought in the territorial wars when he was young. He'd told her once that violence was sometimes necessary to protect what mattered. She hadn't fully understood then. She did now. Vincent Price learned of Bishop's failure and injury from a terse telegram. The professional had checked into a doctor's office in a town 60 miles away, requiring surgery to remove a bullet. He would survive, but was out of commission for months. His message to Price was simple. Target too difficult. Contract void. Refund issued. Price threw his whiskey glass against the wall, shattering it. 2 failures. Frank's crew decimated. Bishop wounded and retreating. A rancher and a girl had humiliated him twice. His reputation was at stake now. Other property owners would hear about this. They would think him weak. They might resist future buyouts, emboldened by Bennett's success. He called for his remaining men. 5 hired guns who'd been waiting for orders. These weren't like Frank's crew. These were professionals, men who'd fought in range wars and survived. Their leader was a cold-eyed killer named Roy Stevens. Price laid out the situation with brutal honesty. "I want them both dead," Price said. "I don't care how you do it. Burn them out, ambush them, poison their water. Just get it done. $500 each when I see the bodies." Roy listened carefully, his scarred face expressionless. "When does the railroad need an answer on the land deal?" 3 weeks, Price replied. "After that, they move to a different route, and I lose 2 years of planning and $100,000 in profit." Roy nodded. "We'll finish it in 1 week, but we do it my way, no interference. And if we succeed, the price is $1,000 each, not $500. What you're asking is war, and war costs more than murder." Price wanted to argue, but recognized the position he was in. Agreed.
1,000 each.
"But I want proof." The ropes of the bodies. "You'll get your proof," Roy said. The 5 men rode out that afternoon, heading toward Bennett's ranch. They would scout tonight, plan tomorrow, execute the day after. Roy had learned patience in his years of violence. Rushing led to mistakes. Mistakes led to failure. He would study his targets, learn their patterns, exploit their weaknesses. Then he would strike with overwhelming force. At the ranch, Cole was teaching Katie to shoot with a rifle. The pistol had served her well, but rifles offered range and accuracy that might make the difference in future confrontations. She practiced until her shoulder ached from recoil, but her groupings improved steadily. She had natural talent, something Cole recognized and encouraged. "You're thinking like a fighter now," he told her. "That's good, but don't lose yourself in it. The goal isn't to become what they are. The goal is to survive and remain who you want to be." Katie lowered the rifle. "Who do you want to be, Cole?" He considered the question seriously. "My brother used to say that a man's character isn't what he does when it's easy. It's what he does when the hard choice and the right choice are the same thing. I want to be someone who chooses right even when it costs everything." That night, Roy and his men watched the ranch from positions in the surrounding rocks. They observed the defensive preparations, the careful movements, the alertness. Roy smiled grimly. These 2 were good, better than expected. But everyone had weaknesses. Everyone made mistakes eventually. His job was to wait for that moment and exploit it without mercy. He studied Katie through a spyglass as she moved around the property. Young, capable, determined. She would be the lever they'd use. Bennett cared about her. That was obvious in how he positioned himself, always between her and potential threats. Caring was weakness. Roy would use it against him. The plan formed in Roy's mind. They wouldn't attack the ranch directly. Too fortified, too predictable. Instead, they'd draw them out. Create a situation where Bennett had to leave the safety of his position. Then they'd have them vulnerable and exposed. It would require patience and precise timing, but Roy had both. 2 days later, smoke rose from the direction of town. Black and thick, the kind that came from burning buildings. Katie saw it first and called for Cole. They stood on the porch, watching the distant smoke plume grow.
Cole's jaw tightened. "That's from Redemption," he said.
"Big fire, multiple buildings probably." "Could be an accident," Katie offered, though her tone suggested she didn't believe it. "Could be," Cole agreed. "Or it could be bait." They stood in silence, weighing options. If the town was burning, people might need help. But leaving the ranch meant vulnerability. It was an impossible choice, which meant it was probably exactly what their enemies wanted. "We have to know," Katie said finally, "even if it's a trap. People could be dying." Cole nodded reluctantly.
He'd known she would say that, and he knew she was right.
Some choices couldn't be avoided, even when they came with terrible risk. They saddled horses quickly, checking weapons and supplies. Cole left a rifle propped in the window, another near the door, making it appear someone might still be home. Then they rode hard toward Redemption, both knowing they might be riding into an ambush, but unable to live with themselves if they stayed behind. Roy watched them leave through his spyglass and nodded with satisfaction. The fire had been easy to arrange, just a few buildings on the outskirts, far enough from Price's properties to be acceptable losses. The people of Redemption were fighting the blaze frantically, which would occupy Bennett and the girl for hours. His men were already moving into position around the ranch. When Bennett and Katie returned exhausted, they would find death waiting. Roy believed an overwhelming force applied with precision. 3 of his men would be inside the house. 2 more would cover the approaches. When the targets returned, they would face crossfire with no escape. It would be over in seconds. Professional. Clean.
Profitable. At the town, Cole and Katie found chaos.
Half of the main street was ablaze, people running with buckets, trying desperately to contain the spread. The marshal was organizing a bucket line from the town well. When he saw Cole and Katie, his expression flickered with something that might have been guilt or warning. Katie immediately joined the bucket line, working alongside townspeople who'd known her father. Cole helped tear down a fence to create a fire break. The work was brutal and exhausting, heat scorching their skin, smoke choking their lungs. But slowly, collectively, they contained the blaze. By late afternoon, the fire was out, leaving 4 buildings as smoking ruins. Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who'd witnessed Katie's father's murder, approached them as they caught their breath. She was tiny and ancient, her hands gnarled with age, but her eyes were sharp and knowing. "This wasn't an accident," she said quietly. "I saw Roy Stevens in town this morning. He was watching those buildings like he was measuring something. Then he and his men rode out before the fire started. You understand what I'm telling you?" Cole understood perfectly. They'd been lured away. The ranch was compromised. He grabbed Katie's arm. "We have to go now," he said urgently. They ran for their horses, exhaustion forgotten. The ride back to the ranch was desperate, both of them pushing their horses harder than was safe. The sun was setting, painting the desert red and gold, beautiful and terrible at once, like everything else in this harsh land. Roy's men heard the horses approaching long before they arrived. They took positions, rifles ready. Roy himself stood in the ranch house doorway, confident and calm. Bennett had proven resourceful, but resourcefulness had limits. Numbers and skill would prevail, they always did. Cole and Katie crested the last ridge and saw their ranch below. It looked peaceful in the fading light, unchanged. But Cole's instinct screamed warning. He pulled his horse to a stop, raising a hand to halt Katie. "Something's wrong," he said, studying the scene. "Look at the door. It's open a few inches. I closed it completely when we left." Katie saw it too. Small detail, easy to miss, potentially fatal if ignored. They dismounted quietly, leaving the horses behind cover. Cole pulled his rifle, Katie her pistol. They separated, approaching from different angles, using every bit of cover the landscape offered. Roy saw them split up and cursed silently. They'd spotted the trap. Not completely, they couldn't know how many men were positioned, but enough to change their approach. This had just become significantly more complicated. He signaled his men to hold position. Let the targets come closer, commit to their approach, then spring the trap when retreat was impossible. Patience. Always patience. Cole moved like a shadow, using the failing light to his advantage. He circled wide, coming at the barn from an unexpected angle. Katie moved toward the house, her path erratic and unpredictable. They'd discussed tactics like this during their training sessions. Never be where the enemy expects. Never establish a pattern. One of Roy's men, positioned behind the water trough, shifted slightly to track Katie's movement. The motion was tiny, but Cole saw it. His rifle came up smoothly. He fired once, the shot echoing across the property. The man behind the trough collapsed. Chaos erupted. Roy's remaining men opened fire from their positions. Katie dove behind a woodpile as bullets chewed through the logs. Cole was already moving, working the bolt action, firing at muzzle flashes.
Another man fell, clutching his stomach. Roy realized the situation had reversed on him.
Instead of controlled ambush, this was desperate firefight. 3 men down to 2 targets who knew the terrain intimately and fought with a ferocity he hadn't anticipated. This was his moment of choice. Press the attack or withdraw to regroup. Pride warred with pragmatism. Another of his men made the choice for him, panicking and breaking cover to charge Katie's position. She shot him twice, center mass, exactly as Cole had taught her. The man's momentum carried him forward 3 more steps before he collapsed. Roy watched dispassionately. Amateurs died first in every battle. He had 2 men left besides himself. 3 against 2, still favorable odds. But the tactical advantage was gone. Bennett had height, cover, and defensive positioning. Roy needed to change the equation dramatically or accept failure. He pulled a bundle from his jacket, something he'd hoped not to use. 3 sticks of dynamite wired together with a long fuse. He lit it calmly, counted to 3, then threw it through the ranch house window. Then he and his surviving men ran, putting distance between themselves and the blast. Cole saw the bundle arc through the air and understood instantly. He screamed Katie's name, pointing. She saw it too, that small tumbling object that meant death and destruction. They ran in opposite directions, getting as far from the house as possible in the seconds before detonation. The explosion was massive, louder than thunder, concussive force that knocked them both flat even at distance. The ranch house disintegrated, wood and glass becoming shrapnel, roof collapsing inward. Fire spread instantly through the debris. Cole's brother's legacy, the home they'd built together, reduced to kindling and ash in one violent moment. Katie's ears rang so badly she couldn't hear her own breathing. She rolled to her stomach, searching for her weapon, trying to locate Cole through the settling dust and smoke. Movement caught her eye. One of Roy's men, thinking she was stunned helpless, approached with his pistol raised. She found her gun and shot him before he realized she was still capable. He fell backward, surprise frozen on his face. Cole staggered to his feet, head spinning from concussion. Through blurred vision, he saw Roy and the last hired gun retreating toward where they'd left their horses. They were abandoning the fight, the cost too high, the chance of success too remote. Cole raised his rifle but couldn't steady his aim. The shot went wide. Roy looked back once, meeting Cole's eyes across the distance. Neither anger nor fear in that look, just professional acknowledgement. Then they were gone, disappearing into the gathering darkness. Katie reached Cole as he collapsed to one knee. She checked him frantically for injuries, finding nothing but bruises and cuts. The blast had missed them both, but barely. 10 feet closer and they'd have been torn apart. The ranch house burned behind them, flames reaching toward the darkening sky. Everything Cole had built with his brother was gone. Clothes, supplies, photographs, memories, all reduced to smoke and ash. Katie felt tears streaming down her face, mixing with the soot and dirt. They'd survived, but the cost felt enormous. Cole watched the fire with an expression she couldn't read. Then he started laughing, a sound that was half sob, half genuine amusement. Katie stared at him, wondering if the blast had affected his mind. "We're alive," he said, his voice rough. "They threw everything at us, and we're still alive." "That's something. That's everything." Katie understood then. They'd lost the building, but they still had the land, the water rights, their lives, their determination. Price had escalated to explosives and still failed. Every failure made him weaker, made his enemies bolder. They were winning, not despite the destruction, but because they'd survived it. That night they camped in the barn, exhausted and aching. In the morning they would ride to redemption and make new plans, but for now, they simply existed. 2 people who'd faced the worst and endured. The desert night was cold, but they built a small fire and shared what food remained in the barn stores. The town of Redemption woke to news that traveled fast. Cole Bennett's ranch had been attacked with explosives, but Bennett and the Sullivan girl had survived. 5 of Vincent Price's hired men were dead or fled. The balance of power was shifting, and people noticed. The marshal received a telegram from the territorial governor demanding an investigation into the fire and the violence. Price's control was cracking. Roy Stevens reached Price's mansion at dawn, wounded and furious. He'd lost 3 men, gained nothing, and failed his contract. Price saw him arrive and knew immediately what it meant. Another failure. More money wasted. More reputation damaged. His carefully constructed empire was unraveling because of one stubborn rancher and a determined girl. "I'm done," Roy said flatly. "Bennett's too dangerous, the girl's too lucky, and you're not paying enough to justify what they can do. Find someone else." Price's face darkened with rage. He wanted to threaten Roy, to demand completion of the contract. But he saw something in the hired gun's eyes that stopped him. Fear. Real fear. If Roy Stevens was frightened of Cole Bennett, then Price had seriously miscalculated the situation. After Roy left, Price sat alone in his study drinking whiskey and contemplating options. The railroad deadline was 2 weeks away. Without the Bennett property and its water rights, the entire deal collapsed. Years of planning, hundreds of thousands in potential profit, all dependent on 300 acres and one man's refusal to die. There was one option left. Price had avoided it because it was messy and drew attention, but he was out of alternatives and running out of time. He pulled out stationery and began writing a letter to the territorial capital. In it, he would claim that Cole Bennett was a dangerous criminal harboring a fugitive wanted for murder. He would use his influence to have a warrant issued and federal marshals sent to arrest them both. It would cost bribes, require careful lies, and might ultimately fail in court. But it would get Bennett away from his property long enough for Price to seize the land through legal manipulation. It wasn't elegant, but it might work. And if Bennett resisted arrest, the marshals would solve Price's problem permanently and legally. He sealed the letter and sent his fastest rider to deliver it. Within a week, federal law would descend on Cole Bennett, and this situation would finally reach its conclusion. At the ranch, Cole and Katie cleared debris and salvaged what little remained. The barn was intact, and that would have to serve as shelter while they rebuilt. Katie found Cole's brother's gun belt in the ruins, scorched but intact. Cole held it for a long moment, then carefully cleaned it and set it aside. Some things survive fires. Not everything could be destroyed. They were discussing reconstruction plans when a rider approached under a white flag. It was Marshal Crawford, looking uncomfortable and apologetic. He dismounted slowly, hands visible and empty. "I'm not here for trouble," he said immediately. "I'm here to warn you." Price has gone over my head. He's contacted the territorial government with accusations. There's a warrant being issued for both of you. Federal marshals will be here within the week. "On what charges?" Cole asked coldly. "Murder, harboring a fugitive, destruction of property, assault on lawmen," all lies but official lies backed by Price's money and influence. "The marshals won't ask questions. They'll just arrest you, and by the time you prove innocence in court, Price will own this land and the railroad deal will be done." Katie felt despair threatening to overwhelm her. They'd fought so hard, survived so much, only to be defeated by paperwork and corruption. But Cole's expression didn't change. He simply nodded once, processing the information. "How much time?" he asked. 5 days, maybe 6, Crawford replied. "They're coming from Santa Fe. I'm sorry, Bennett. I know I've been Price's man, but what he's doing now crosses lines even I won't stomach. That's why I'm telling you. You've got time to run if you leave now." "We're not running," Katie said firmly. "This is our land. We have a right to it. Legal right, moral right."
We're not letting him win through corruption.
Crawford shrugged. "Then you better have a plan, because federal marshals don't negotiate. They come in hard and they take people. If you resist, they shoot." After Crawford left, Cole and Katie sat in the barn's shade, considering options. Running meant losing everything, abandoning the fight. Staying meant arrest and possibly death if they resisted. There had to be a third option, something unexpected that changed the rules of the game. Katie pulled out the deed to her father's property and the formal complaint filed with Crawford, 2 pieces of paper that represented legal rights and documented crimes. Then she looked at Cole with sudden inspiration. "What if we go public?" she said. "What if we bypass Price's control and take everything directly to the newspapers, to the territorial governor, to the railroad itself? Show them the real situation, the murders, the corruption, the attempts on our lives. Force everything into the light where Price can manipulate it." Cole considered this carefully. It was dangerous. Price had allies everywhere. But it had one critical advantage. It was the last thing Price would expect. He'd been fighting them with violence and legal maneuvering. He wouldn't anticipate them fighting back with transparency and publicity. "We'd have to ride to Santa Fe," Cole said slowly. "Deliver everything in person to people Price doesn't control. That's 3 days hard riding, and we'd be exposed the entire way. Price would send men after us." Katie met his eyes steadily. "Everything we've done has been dangerous. What's different now?" "Nothing," Cole admitted. "And everything. This isn't just fighting anymore. This is war, with all cards on the table." "Then let's play to win," Katie said. They spent the next day preparing. Cole sold 5 horses to a neighboring rancher for traveling money, keeping only their 2 best mounts. Katie copied all relevant documents, creating backups in case one set was lost or destroyed. They packed light weapons and papers, nothing else. Everything they owned fit in 2 saddlebags and 2 lives that had been stripped to essentials. On the second evening, as they prepared to leave at dawn, Cole spoke carefully. "If this doesn't work, if we end up arrested, or worse, I want you to know something. Meeting you changed my life, gave me purpose again. Whatever happens next, I don't regret anything." Katie felt emotion tightening her throat. "I don't regret it either. You saved my life, and then you gave me a reason to fight for it. That's a gift I can never repay." They shook hands formally, a moment of respect and acknowledgement. Then they turned in, sleeping fitfully before the journey ahead. Price learned of their departure from a spy in town. His rage was volcanic. They were running, slipping through his fingers again. He sent riders to intercept them on every route to Santa Fe, 10 men total, with orders to kill on sight and make it look like bandits. Bennett and the girl would never reach the capital alive. He would ensure it. Cole and Katie rode through the darkness of early morning, stars still bright above them. They chose a route that skirted the main trails, harder terrain but less predictable. Cole's instincts told him Price would anticipate their destination and plan accordingly. So they would move like ghosts, fast and invisible, giving their enemies no clear target. The first 2 days passed without incident, though they saw riders in the distance several times. Price's men, searching, patrolling. Cole and Katie avoided contact, hiding when necessary, riding hard when they had clear path. Katie discovered she had a gift for this kind of travel, for reading landscape and choosing routes that offered concealment and speed. On the third day, 30 miles from Santa Fe, they encountered a checkpoint. 6 armed men had blocked the road, claiming to be searching for escaped criminals. Cole saw immediately it was a trap. They reined in their horses 200 yards out, considering options. "We can go around," Katie suggested. "Circle through the hills. They'll just relocate to another position," Cole replied. "Price probably has every approach covered. We break through here, or we don't get through at all." Katie looked at the 6 men, their confident positions, their weapons ready. Fighting seemed suicidal. Running seemed futile. But surrender meant death just as surely. Then Cole smiled, the expression surprising her. "You trust me?" "Always," Katie replied. "Then follow my lead and stay close. We're riding straight through." Before she could question the insanity of it, Cole spurred his horse forward at full gallop, heading directly at the checkpoint. Katie followed, her heart pounding. The men ahead raised their rifles, shouting warnings. Cole didn't slow. At 100 yards, he veered suddenly left. At 50 yards, he cut right. The men fired, but hitting a moving target on horseback was nearly impossible, even for skilled shooters. Cole's pistol came up and he fired while riding, not aiming for men, but for horses. One mount screamed and reared, throwing its rider. Another bolted, carrying its rider away from the fight. Katie followed Cole's example, firing at the ground near horses' hooves, creating chaos without unnecessary killing. They burst through the checkpoint at full speed, men scrambling and cursing behind them. 2 more shots followed them but fell short. Then they were past, racing away while the men tried to reorganize their panicked horses. By the time pursuit could form, Cole and Katie were miles ahead on fresher mounts. They reached Santa Fe as the sun set on the 4th day, exhausted and filthy but alive. The territorial capital was a real city, not a frontier town. Stone buildings, paved streets, gas lamps. Civilization in the midst of wilderness. They rode directly to the governor's mansion and demanded audience with anyone who would listen. A young secretary, initially dismissive, became interested when Katie showed him the documents. Murder complaints, death threats, documented corruption. He disappeared into the building's interior, returning 20 minutes later with an older man who introduced himself as Territorial Prosecutor Henry Walsh. Walsh listened to their story for 2 hours, examining documents, asking detailed questions. When they finished, he sat back in his chair, expression grave. "This is serious," he said. "If even half of what you've told me is true, Vincent Price belongs in prison. But proving it will be difficult. He has influence, powerful friends, expensive lawyers." Katie leaned forward intently. What if the railroad knew the truth? Would they still do business with him? Walsh's expression brightened. "That's clever thinking. The railroad has federal contracts. They can't afford to be associated with murder and corruption. If we contact them directly, show them this evidence, they might withdraw from the land deal entirely. Without that incentive, Price loses his motivation to harm you." Over the next 3 days, Walsh worked with speed and efficiency. He contacted railroad executives, showing them documented evidence of Price's criminal activities. He filed formal charges with the territorial court. He sent letters to newspapers in 3 cities, ensuring the story would become public. Price's web of influence, so carefully constructed, began to unravel under the light of publicity. The railroad responded first. In a terse telegram, they informed Price that all negotiations were terminated pending investigation of serious criminal allegations. The land deal was dead. Price's years of planning and violence had gained him nothing. Federal marshals arrived in Redemption 5 days later, but not to arrest Cole and Katie. They came with warrants for Vincent Price, Frank Dawson, and 3 other men on charges of murder, conspiracy, and intimidation. Price tried to flee but was captured 20 miles from his mansion. His empire collapsed in days, property seized, allies abandoning him, influence evaporating. Cole and Katie returned to the ranch 6 weeks later. The legal battles resolved in their favor. The territorial court had awarded Katie full title to her father's property and provided compensation for the violence she'd endured. Cole's ranch was officially recognized as lawfully operated and defended. They were heroes in some accounts, vigilantes in others, but mostly they were just 2 people who'd refused to surrender their rights to corruption and violence. The ranch house was rebuilt over 3 months, larger than before. Katie worked alongside Cole every day, and somewhere in that shared labor, friendship deepened into something more profound. Neither spoke of it directly, but it was present in every careful gesture, every shared glance, every moment of unspoken understanding. One evening, as the new house neared completion, they sat on the unfinished porch watching the sun set over the desert. The land was theirs now, truly and completely. No threats shadowed them. No violence waited in darkness. For the first time in months, the future felt open rather than constricting. "Cole," Katie said carefully, "what you said before we left for Santa Fe, about how meeting me changed your life. Did you mean that?" "Every word," Cole replied. She took his hand, callous palm, meeting callous palm. "I want to stay," she said, "not just to work the ranch, to build it with you, to make it ours together." Cole was quiet for a long moment, and Katie felt anxiety rising. Then he squeezed her hand gently. "I'd want nothing more. But are you sure? This life is hard, lonely sometimes, dangerous in ways we can't predict." "I'm sure," Katie said. "I've learned something these past months. Home isn't a place that's given to you. It's something you fight for and build with people who matter. This land matters. You matter. I want to stay." Cole smiled, genuine and unguarded for perhaps the first time since his brother's death. "Then stay. We'll build something good here, something that lasts." They shook hands formally, as they had that first day when Katie asked for work. But this time, the handshake became an embrace. 2 people who'd survived hell together, now choosing to build heaven from its ashes. The desert wind moved through the sage, carrying the smell of rain and possibility. Tomorrow they would continue building. Tonight they simply existed together, 2 souls who'd found each other in the midst of chaos and decided to make something beautiful from the ruins of what had been lost. In Redemption, life returned to normal. Marshall Crawford, shamed by his complicity but given mercy by Walsh's recommendation, worked to restore integrity to his office. The town rebuilt the burned buildings. Mrs. Chen lived to see justice for the murder she'd witnessed, and she spent her remaining years telling anyone who would listen about the cowgirl who'd stood up to evil and won. Vincent Price went to trial and was convicted on multiple charges. He died in territorial prison 3 years later, his fortune gone, his name synonymous with corruption and failure. Frank Dawson and the surviving members of his crew received long sentences. Roy Stevens disappeared into history, his fate unknown, but his legend growing among those who told stories about the Bennett Ranch siege. The railroad eventually built its route through different territory, paying fair prices to willing sellers. The land deal that had caused so much suffering became a cautionary tale about greed and hubris. Future developers learned the lesson or ignored it at their peril. Cole and Katie married the following spring, a simple ceremony attended by neighbors and friends. They expanded the ranch over the years, never wealthy but always prosperous, earning reputation for fair dealing and skilled horsemanship. They trained young cowboys and cowgirls, teaching not just technique but character, insisting that strength meant nothing without integrity. In later years, when people asked Katie about the violence of that time, she would say simply that it taught her the difference between existing and living. Existing was accepting whatever the world decided to give you. Living was fighting for what you believed was right, even when the cost seemed unbearable. And when people asked Cole why he'd defended a stranger at such risk to himself, he would smile and say that she hadn't been a stranger. She'd been someone asking for dignity when she had nothing else. That kind of courage deserved respect, protection, and partnership. He'd simply recognized what she already was and helped her survive long enough to realize it herself. Their story became legend in the territory, told and retold with varying accuracy, but the core remained true. 2 people who refused to surrender their humanity to violence, who fought not for revenge but for the right to exist with dignity, who built something lasting from the ashes of destruction. The ranch still stands today, passed through generations, a testament to the truth that courage and decency can prevail even in the harshest circumstances. The desert remembers everything. It remembers the blood spilled in greed. It remembers the fire and the explosions. But mostly it remembers two people standing together against the darkness, refusing to break, building light where violence had tried to create only shadows. That's the story worth telling. That's the story that endures.